Family Radio. You are listening to Bryan Fischer's show, and I am your host today, Dr. Gina Loudon. Glad to be with you and truly honored to have my next guest. He is former Speaker of the House, and he is was a former presidential candidate. But my favorite thing about this man, I want to tell you, I've met him many times, and first of all, my pastor supported him, and I found that very interesting. My pastor, Jim Garlow, here at Skyline Church in San Diego, California, my pastor supported him in his presidential bid. And so I knew that meant a lot. But I went myself, after having met him several times in sort of formal audience sorts of situations where there's a rope in the rope line and the whole thing. And I didn't really have a strong opinion on him. I'd heard him speak many times. You know, he's a powerful speaker who can put together arguments and consolidate the message in ways that very few in this country have been able to do since Reagan. But this is what I want to tell you about my next guest. I emceed at the Washington Man of Prayer event, and this man humbly walked in. Now, there was a whole first roped off area in the first row for all of the dignitaries, right, that were speaking at this event. This man humbly walked in, sat in the back row. I'll never forget this as long as I live, and didn't say a word. And he was there to support the Man of Prayer event. That told me more than I ever needed to know about the heart of this iconic political personality, this man that we've known for years, this man that has given so much to this country. Speaker Newt Gingrich, thank you for being on the show with me today.
Oh, thank you. That's a very touching introduction, and of course, I'm just very honored to have a chance to chat with you and to support the good work you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Now, I know that the first question you're getting from everyone, and probably the question that you dread, but I'm sure you have a good answer too, is are you at all considering running for president again?
Well, Callista and I have not closed the door on it, and we're certainly open to looking at it, but we also recognize it's a very big mountain to climb, and we're going to have a lot of very good candidates after this election. I think we may have as many as 10 or 12 people running. I tell everyone that we have no front runner for the Republican nomination, but we're sure going to have a lot of runners, and a lot of them are very close friends of ours and people we respect a lot. So we'll wait. We haven't closed the door, but we're not at the moment prepared to announce an exploratory committee either.
Well, I think there are a lot of people that would be very interested to see you, and that among them probably my pastor, Jim Garlow, as I mentioned before. Gingrich Productions, you wrote for them things you wouldn't have believed about President Obama and the 2014 election. Of the things that you spell out in that article, Mr. Speaker, what do you think is having the most impact on the psychology of the voter today?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I do, and I'm glad you noticed it, I do 2 free newsletters a week and a free podcast every week at gingrichproductions.com that people can get just by going to gingrichproductions.com and signing up. And we began putting together this list. I would say it's actually cumulative. It's not any one thing. I think, the Obamacare website collapsing is one thing. The failure of the red lines in Syria is another. The argument he's in with the American people over Ebola is another. And you go down item after item, and it's just a cumulative effect. It's a little bit like having a brother-in-law who keeps borrowing your car and wrecking it. And after the 4th or 5th car, you're not much inclined to loan it to him anymore. Yeah. And I think there's a sense that the president keeps wrecking things, that he doesn't understand the real world, and that it's dangerous for the country to have somebody in charge of the nation who has these characteristics.
If you woke up tomorrow morning and you had been elected president, Mr. Speaker, what would you do first? I mean, it does seem like we are in such perilous times that if someone asked me this question, I'm not sure how I would answer it, because there are so many tragedies, it seems, pointed right at this country right now. So where would you start?
Well, first of all, remembering the scale of shock that the country would be in if they woke up tomorrow morning and you had a President Gingrich, I think I would take a lesson from President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who on June the 6th, 1944, did a national radio address from the White House announcing the invasion at Normandy, and closed by asking everyone to pray for the husbands and sons who were risking their lives landing to defeat Nazism. And then he said something very interesting. He said, people have asked me to declare a day of prayer, but the great war that we're in is so dangerous and so difficult that I believe every day should be a day of prayer. And so I am asking all of you to pray every day for the country and for the people, the Americans risking their lives to defend freedom. And this is, of course, a famous liberal Democrat who, the speech is well worth hearing. We used to get radio stations to play it on the 6th of June just because it was so shocking to people to hear a liberal Democrat this openly talking about prayer. I suspect the first thing I would do is say to the country, you're probably in as much shock as I am, and we should all go to God in prayer because we're going to need it to get America out of the problems it's currently in.
And what issue should the next president, if it is a Republican president, or even frankly, if it were a Democrat president, what issue do you think most threatens all that is American that, of course, your beautiful wife, Callista, talks about in her books, and we're going to talk about that next. But what issue do you think most threatens all that is sacred and sovereign to America right now?
Well, President Reagan captured it in his farewell address when he said the one thing that he wanted to warn us about was the degree to which we are no longer teaching American history and American exceptionalism to young people. It's really worth reading or listening to. You can Google President Reagan's farewell address. It's a remarkable speech. Callista and I did a movie, Rendezvous with Destiny, about Ronald Reagan, and we're very proud of it. Great documentary. I think that we have a real danger that the country is just forgetting everything that made us American. I mean, I watch the intensity of the secular left. If you looked at the recent example in Houston, where the mayor and the city attorney wanted to subpoena the sermons of ministers because they disagreed with them, and they basically wanted to censor and intimidate ministers even in the pulpit. And it's something that your pastor and I, Jim Garland and I, have talked about a great deal because it's an enormous threat to our very survival as a country. If we end up losing our ability to worship and losing freedom of religion and losing the rule of law, we will no longer be America.
I've noticed over the last few elections, and I don't know how to advise the electorate on this, especially conservatives, especially conservative Christians who really want to see change, but they want to make sure that their candidates are true conservatives. So, Mr. Speaker, what I see is that we ask them questions that sort of back them into a corner because we want their commitment that they're going to fight for the things that we really care about. But then we tend to say, we push them in that corner and give the Democrats sort of something to pigeonhole them and attack them with. You were actually united with Jay-Z on a common cause and a prison reform situation here in California. Some might say, why in the world would someone like Newt Gingrich associate himself with someone like Jay-Z? Haven't you heard the message in his music? And that's an easy attack, sort of. So how do we, as we approach this election, we really want to get commitment from these candidates as to where they stand on the issues that are sacred to us, especially spiritually sacred to us. But how do we do that without making them a target for the other side?
Well, one way to do it is to take the most radical views of the other side. Let me give you the example of the abortion issue. President Obama, as a state legislator, voted to protect the right to have abortions in the 9th month.
Yeah. And
voted to protect the doctors who killed babies who were still alive after the abortion.
Yeah.
Now, 80 or 85% of the American people think that that's crazy, that surely by the 9th month this is a baby. You can't justify it. And if you pick that fight knowing that your radical secular opponent is going to be on the wrong side, you're isolating them. It's partly a question of who isolates whom. And the tone of the campaign. And I think that there are a number of these kind of issues where when we do it right, it's the other side that loses. And when we do it wrong, we let ourselves get isolated. And one of the real characteristics this year has been, generally speaking, Republican candidates have been pretty good at keeping the Democrats on defense and having the country understand that the social radicals and the grumpy people who want to do bad things are Democrats, not Republicans. And in a place like Colorado, that may well defeat Mark Udall, who all of a sudden went from being this very positive person to being a grumpy left-winger, and has lost a whole block of votes in the middle as a result.
What is your opinion of how to merge the sort of Tea Party perspective along with the GOP perspective and get them to work together rather than fighting one another? And where do you consider yourself in that continuum?
Well, I think I am psychologically and in core attitudes with the Tea Party people, in the sense that I believe deeply in the Constitution. I believe deeply in a populist kind of approach. That I'm very suspicious of big money, whether it's Democratic big money or Republican big money. And I don't particularly have any interest in fact, I'm hostile to the idea of Wall Street running America. So in that sense, I'm close to them. On the other hand, I also understand and helped organize and lead a majority. And to do that, this is a huge country. You've got to have a positive, cheerful attitude of bringing people together if you're going to govern America. And I think that, the best of when you watch when Ben Sasse arrives as a freshman senator from Nebraska, he's going to combine the best of both worlds. He's very much committed to a Tea Party worldview, but he is so bright and has such a great intellectual background that the traditional establishment Republicans are going to be blown away by his ability to reason and to get things done, even though he is boldly in favor of doing things that would be thought of by the establishment as Tea Party issues.
And so do you have any warnings for the, let's say the Senate, that Republicans do take majority coming up here on Tuesday? Do you have warnings? Should they go slow? Should they get stuff done that really impacts the American people so that they have a strong record? What's your advice to that proposed
focus on
new
solutions
Republican Senate?
And do something good every single day. Move forward. Let Obama be Dr. No. We should be the party of yes, finding good, positive ways to improve America, to solve our problems, to get back to a balanced budget, to return power to the people. And every day we should pass something good and positive, and then let Obama and the left-wing Democrats be the people who are screaming no.
Speaker Gingrich, thank you so much for being on Focal Point with Bryan Fischer with me as your host today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with your amazing wife just right after this break. Thanks for being with us. We're going to come back in just a moment with Callista Gingrich. Stay tuned.